In the year 732, an expanding Umayyad army pushed north out of the Iberian Peninsula. They marched through the rugged passes of the Pyrenees Mountains, leaving a collapsed Visigoth kingdom behind them, and crossed deep into the territory of the Franks. Waiting for them was Charles Martel, the de facto ruler of a Frankish kingdom locked in a bitter, ongoing civil war. His army was a fragile coalition of infantry, facing a highly mobile veteran cavalry force. For centuries, historians framed this encounter as the moment the fate of Western civilization was decided. The traditional narrative insists that if Martel's line had broken, the Umayyads would have overrun the continent, replacing Christianity with an Islamic caliphate stretching to the English Channel. But many modern scholars view the clash completely differently. Because the invading Umayyads were heavily focused on raiding, there is a strong argument that this was simply a localized expedition designed to loot the wealthy abbey of St. Martin of Tours, rather than a grand war of conquest. To figure out what this battle actually meant for the trajectory of the world, we have to strip away the centuries of myth. We need to run a historical thought experiment and ask what the world would look like today if Charles Martel had been crushed. Let's start by indulging the extreme scenario. Imagine the Frankish shield wall collapses at Tours, Martel is killed, the army is routed, and the Umayyads pour into the power vacuum to claim the entire European continent. This is a 13th century Islamic celestial diagram. At the time of the battle, Europe was languishing in the early Middle Ages, while the Islamic world was entering a golden age of science. A total conquest would have injected centuries of lost Greek philosophy, advanced mathematics, and sophisticated astronomy directly into a region struggling with basic literacy. The day-to-day culture of Europe would also shift. Islamic dietary laws would have removed pork from the menu, altering centuries of European culinary development. And because of differing cultural views on domestic animals, the practice of breeding and keeping dogs as household pets might never have taken root in the West. But when we look at the actual geopolitical map of the 8th century, this sweeping continental takeover falls apart. The Umayyad Caliphate was already stretched to its limit, managing territories from Damascus to Spain. They were simultaneously dealing with massive internal friction, particularly a growing Berber rebellion in North Africa that would soon sever their supply lines to Iberia entirely. Even if they had annihilated the Frankish army, the Caliphate lacked the manpower and structural stability to occupy and hold territories stretching into Germany and Italy. The myth of the Battle of Tours preventing a total continental takeover ignores the reality of an empire already buckling under its own weight. So, if the maximalist view fails the reality check, what about the minimalist one? If this was merely a raid, the Umayyads sack the Abbey at Tours, ride back south with their loot, and the Caliphate still fractures 15 years later. In this scenario, the battle barely registers as a historical footnote. But writing off the battle as a minor skirmish ignores the political fragility of the Frankish kingdom at that exact moment. Martel was a de facto ruler, still fighting a civil war to bring rogue duchies under his control. The true threat at Tours was the collapse of political cohesion. An Umayyad victory would have permanently shattered the Franks. If Martel dies on the battlefield, the Frankish civil war consumes the region. Without his leadership, the large and powerful Duchy of Aquitaine in the south likely remains permanently annexed to the Muslim rulers of Iberia. That single border adjustment shifts the boundary between these two empires hundreds of miles north. The landmass we currently recognize as France loses roughly a third of its territory. A defeat at Tours wouldn't have reached London or Berlin. It would have fractured the proto-French state into isolated warring regions, preventing a unified Western power from ever taking root. In reality, the Frankish shield wall held. The Umayyad commander was killed, and the invading army retreated in the night. Charles Martel won an overwhelming victory, securing immense prestige and earning the moniker the Hammer. He immediately weaponized this newfound political capital. Using the justification that he had just protected the church from invaders, Martel began stripping the church of its property, redistributing vast tracts of land to his most loyal military commanders. By explicitly trading land for military loyalty and service, Martel established the prototype for the relationship between a lord and his vassals that would come to define the European feudal system. This relentless consolidation of power ended the Frankish civil wars and allowed his family to establish the Carolingian dynasty. This map shows the borders of the Holy Roman Empire. Dynastic stability gave Charlemagne the resources to forge this massive territory. Look at how that empire was internally divided. Those administrative lines eventually hardened into the borders of modern-day Germany, France, and Italy. Ultimately, the Battle of Tours stands as a cornerstone of history because it handed one man the political capital required to draw the map of the modern Western world.
क्या हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते? सब कुछ खत्म हो रहा है। अलविदा मेरी